I think you and I and many people that I talk to live inside the AI bubble. I think a lot of engineers are not using LLMs yet. A lot of companies are not using AI yet. This future is not evenly distributed. They're going to be the LLM natives, and they're going to run circles around the ones that are trying to still adapt, and we're coming from behind and we're busy with things, right? And I think ignoring them will be bad for companies. Because they're going to be creating a lot of value very quickly. I don't think engineering is going away, but I think it's going to change radically. And I think it's going to be very painful for engineering as a whole.
Hello, and welcome to the AI and ML Conversations with myself, Yavor Botev. Today, I'm very excited to have as a guest on the podcast, Pablo Fernandez. Pablo is currently head of engineering at Pexels for Canva, and he is somebody with a lot of experience in working for very large companies to very small micro companies. So yeah, welcome, Pablo. Welcome on the podcast.
Thank you, Yavor. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. So many things I want to talk to you about, and hopefully we can fit it all into our slot. First of all, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your early years and your formative experiences. I saw that you worked for some time at Google, and then shortly after that, you worked in startups, essentially. You founded some startups, you worked in small companies. So maybe you can give me a few interesting anecdotes from your first years as a software engineer. Like, what's the difference between Google and a small startup? What did you like? What didn't like? Just some things. I'm sure you have some nice things to share.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, working for Google was transformative for my career. Just having Google on your CV opened so many doors, right? And the experience was super interesting, even though sometimes the job was boring because Google, like all companies, had boring tasks that somebody has to do, right? So it's you go in and it's quite glorified, and it's like, oh, okay, this is actually not that different. But no, it was amazing in that how smart everybody was at Google, and how all the conversations could go deep and keep on going. That was something amazing. It was at that point the largest organization that I worked for. When I joined, it was 20,000 people. And not only that, it was also growing like crazy at that time. So there was an internal app that showed you how much of the company was newer than you. By the time somebody told me that the app existed, here, go and check it out, which was somewhere within the first month, 5% of the organization at Google was newer than me. So that is a crazy number. How do you maintain culture like that? In retrospective, though, I regret not taking more advantage of my time at Google. I think I was young, naive. I didn't have a lot of guidance and I didn't know what I was doing. So I was just making decisions day by day. And I was not being strategic with my career about where I wanted to go and what decisions I need to make to get me there. And I see, looking back, so many opportunities that I wasted working there. But it is what it is. I learned some lessons.
Yeah.
And yes, after that, I co-founded several startups. I would say three, like are my main startups. Obviously, I always have side projects going on, like germinating here and there. I'm talking to people. Like there's always something, right? And of these three startups, I always say the first one failed, but it should have succeeded. And I still have a chip on my shoulder for that because the idea was good. And I saw that people execute the same idea with a lot of success. And the second one was successful and we eventually sold it. And it was also very transformative for my career because I found myself hiring people and I was, as I told you, like I wasn't being very strategic. So up to that point, I was of the mindset of like managers are these things that companies hire and I'm not sure why. Like they're like these maybe a necessary evil and I'm not sure if it's necessary. That was my mindset when I went to Google, which is it's not a good mindset to have, but it is like that sort of like rebellious engineer mindset, right? And then when I hire people, it's like, oh, I see now what I need to do, and I had to very quickly start learning, and I saw that I love managing as much as I love writing code, which is such a privilege.
Oh yeah, that's very nice. I also noticed, like in the way you talk about yourself, you always look for the impact that you're having, the business impact, not just on the engineering side, but on the
Yep.
commercial and business side. In your early years, have you always been interested on the business side and maybe starting your own startup, or did it happen after you saw something or you thought about it? How
Oh,
did it go?
okay. That is an interesting question. Um, no, I don't think I was always interested in business impact, although I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Both my
Mm,
parents run their own companies. And very early on, like when I needed money as a kid, as a 8-year old, um, yeah, at some point I had like the summer job, right? But I also tried to make my own things, like create something and sell it. I started making keychains and selling them door to door as an 8-year old. So it was very natural to me. But then throughout my whole career until after Google, no, I was not thinking too much about the business impact. Since then, I always think about this equation that I think everybody should have, which is you are costing some money to the company by means of salary and taxes and the office and the equipment that you have. How
mhm,
much money are you making to the company? If it's less than that, then I think you should be worried because
mm.
that means that the company would be better off without you. And that is something that at some point it appeared in my mind and it stayed there like every time. Am I creating more business impact than what I'm costing? It should be a lot more, not breaking even, right? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was something that I developed, I would say, late 20s, early
Mm.
30s. So not very early on.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, and sometimes it's, of course, difficult to accurately estimate the business impact that you're having because there are
Yeah.
many, yeah, there are many. Obviously, it's like it's easy to point to your projects or your tasks, but then there's also a lot of indirect positive effects that you bring to the company, which are very difficult to measure. I'm
Yeah.
sure as a manager, as a manager, you have opinion on those. But maybe before we talk about management, I wanted to ask in your early days, how was your focus split on writing code and software engineering and these business aspects? And yeah, do you think it's a good idea for engineers to focus on both or they should focus just on one of them?
I was very focused on the code part.
Hmm.
I was pretty much everything else is somebody else's problem. Mine is
Hmm.
writing code. Um, and no, I don't think that's the best mindset. So I would say in any organization, you can have a few people like that. And generally, if those people are specialists, which I don't think
Hmm.
I was, but if they're specialists, it adds up that sort of mindset of it's almost research instead of development, right? But no, I don't think it's a good mindset. And I think it's getting worse over time as we progress. As an engineer, understanding the business and understanding how you're contributing to it and voicing ideas that take into consideration how the business operates and how you can contribute to that makes you so much more valuable. And in an organization, I would say generally, I like at least 90% of the engineers to be thinking in those terms. So it's
Mm,
not wrong to not think in those terms, but be aware that there's a maximum quota that an organization can have. Because if nobody's thinking in that way, it's very hard to have as a whole business impact because it all relies on meticulous planning of where we're going by whoever is leading the organization instead of distributing the problem of figuring
mhm,
out what the users need and how to develop it and so on.
mm. That's actually a very interesting tangent on which we can go because now with the introduction of more and more AI assistants, generally speaking, you see trends like product managers are starting to code some proof of concepts. You have software engineers being able to ship a lot more quickly with code assistants. Of course, there's the question of how maintainable and extensible the code is and stuff like this, but let's forget about this for now.
Yep.
But yeah, there is a bit of a trend towards the job descriptions and the responsibilities of these different people converging a little bit. And I wanted to get your opinion on that. Like, have you seen some good practices in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree in that these roles are changing. And I see some companies that acknowledge this. Even before LLMs, they acknowledge this, but now I think it's becoming everywhere. By creating the concept of product engineer, which is sort of a mix of both things of a product manager and an engineer. Generally heavy on the engineer side. And I think that the reality is that a lot of companies that have engineers have the expectations that they will be product engineers. And as
Mm-hmm.
LLMs become better and can this is another way of putting it, but the LLMs are lowering the cost of the line of code. So the way that you create value by writing code is going down, and the becomes more valuable, like in a relative manner, is what code are you choosing to write, which is deciding what feature to implement,
Mm-hmm.
what proof of concept to build, to see if something works. And that is starting to go in the direction of product management. And I see that engineers now, and I think this will continue going in that direction, require a lot more of the skills that we normally expect from managers of talking to the people and assembling the team to build a thing. So I don't think engineering is going away, but I think it's going to change radically. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's going to be very painful for engineering as a whole because it's changing the foundation that makes the culture of engineering. And that is
Mm.
that is going to be that the growing pains of that are not going to be small.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's an interesting thought. So let's maybe keep this like in our minds for a second, and I want to get you back
Yeah.
to when you were working as a basically as a CEO or CTO for startups.
Yep.
'Cause I can see now you have this more strategic way of thinking, and at the same time you are also very much into writing code. So as a startup leader, like a CEO or CTO, how did you spend your time? How did you split it between coding and this leadership stuff?
That's a good question. This is all before LLMs,
Mm,
before AI turned into what it is today,
yeah.
before 2020. I was what it's better described as the tech co-founder. So all of my startups, I own tech in one way or another because
Mm-hmm.
either I was co-founding with another tech person, I was a tech co-founder, or I was a solo. So I own tech. So I spend a lot of time writing code. Now, one of the things that I've done, and this is something that for anybody that takes the role of CTO, I recommend not making this mistake. When I had a very capable business co-founder, I would be very inward focused, only working on building the application and working towards the success by building the application that we were working on. And what
Mm-hmm.
I've seen is that that was the right thing for the startup, but it was not the right thing for my career. Because at one point, well, the co-founder for that company left, and I was so focused only on one part that I did not have the the correct understanding of the rest of the business. So it was very hard for me to become the CEO of that company and pick everything up and keep it on going,
Mm-hmm.
which I managed to do. But it could have been easier if I was more involved. But also, our careers are long, and a startup. Some people do a startup, and that's the whole thing. I didn't spend enough time building the long term relationships with the rest of the world that opens opportunities for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I recommend everybody that's doing any sort of startup like that in the technical role. Don't focus only on your thing. Think about long term of forming the relationships that might be your co founder in your next startup. You never know. Like at some point, you're going to be doing something else. Think long term.
Yeah. Yeah, that I also have this recently started thinking about my career in the long term and and realized, hey man, I have something like 20, 30 more years of career in me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that also I think helps frame some small things that I am focused on at the moment, maybe just some slight detail at work or in some other project. And having a long term mindset helps you realize how not important these small concerns are.
Yes.
So yeah, like having a long-term mindset is really, really nice thing. And the importance of relationships is definitely there. I also was thinking about as a startup founder or as a CTO at like, as a founding engineer, how does your life look like? Because from what I've seen, working in a high moving startup really takes over your life. So you don't have much time and opportunity to think about anything else. Is this
Yes. But so I imagine some of your audience might be coming from the startup world. Some
Mhm,
um, when I have worked on startups, I mean, there's so many ways of going about it. I particularly don't go for work-life balance. This is not a target that I have for my life. And that doesn't mean that everybody should be the same. Like for some
mhm,
people that is important, and that's perfectly fine. I think having work-life balance and doing a job and having a side gig of a startup and having a family with kids, like it just doesn't fit. Like sometimes there's a level of not accepting reality of just it doesn't fit, and you
mm,
need to drop something. But I think for a lot of, like, when we see startup taking over somebody's life,
mhm,
what I have done in the past is what some people call like work life integration, where yes, it's taking over my life, but also in my life, I get a lot of satisfaction and I get a lot of what is non work
mhm,
from work activities. Like when you're building relationships, like somebody might go to the to the pub with some mates, right? And I
yeah,
might go to an event where I'm socializing with the people that could open doors for the startup. Could be customers, could be anything. And like, is that work or is it fun? It's sort of in the middle. And I think
mm,
you win when you manage to capture those two things, which is so important to create a startup in a space where you enjoy, because you're going to have to put a gazillion hours to make a startup. I think that's
yeah.
essentially what my life has been in the past.
Oh, interesting. Do you personally feel like so personal anecdote, for me personally, I feel like I have to focus on more than one thing in my life, such as maybe do sports and maybe meet up with friends rather than focusing mostly on single part of my life, like working. I saw this as well when I had my own business. I realized at some point, whoa, like I'm really focused on this and I'm forgetting about everything else. And I'm not sure if that's what I would personally like for myself. And at least for me personally, that was not the healthiest thing.
Yeah.
So for you, does it work, or do you feel like you also have to kind of balance it with other stuff, even if
Okay.
that's your
Yeah.
biggest focus?
So kind of. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
I would say there's many categories. For me, I tend to work better when I have a single focus, and I tend to be very happy with a single focus. Maybe I have some obsessive personality there. I don't know. I know now to watch out for like burnout and things like that,
Mm,
and I do force myself to take time off and engage some of my numerous hobbies and things like that to disconnect. Normally, those are for the purpose of disconnection. Something else that I do explicitly is when I'm in that sort of single focus mindset is try to keep track of where the relationships that are non-work relationships, like the friends,
mm,
those friendships and how they're going. Because I know that I'm going to be a bit more absent in their lives when that is happening, but I want to make sure that I'm not neglecting. So I want to make sure
mhm,
that I'm still present, even if I'm present less, and that I'm present if I'm needed, because you never know when something happens and you're needed. And to, at that point, to use the flexibility that you get out of when you're a startup founder, like you don't have a boss telling you you need to work, right? You don't have
mhm,
like a quota of holidays. You don't have days that you have to work or not. Like take advantage of that flexibility to increase the quality of time that you can offer to a friend.
mhm.
So I would, for example, be the one that if a friend, like, I don't know, somebody has a breakup or something like that, show up on a Tuesday and we spend until 3 a.m. talking, because I know that
Yeah,
I can write off the Wednesday and it's fine because I'm going to work the next weekend anyway,
yeah,
and do things
yeah.
like that where I can offer a lot more quality. And I think I wasn't very good at that at the beginning. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm very good at that now. At least I'm conscious and I'm trying.
Yeah, being aware of something is like the first fundamental step. in deciding on whether to improve it or not, or whether it needs to be improved.
Yeah.
Something else that I've always grappled with is the quality of your thinking if you are working a lot on a single thing. Like, there is one benefit of if you're really focusing on solving some problem, whatever it is, that if you focus obsessively on it, then that's good because it means you can find out what the issues are and improve them. But there is another problem related to how effective you are and how efficient you are and how good your decisions are. For example, if you are working 10 hours per day, are you making the right decisions? And what if you worked for 6 hours per day, but the quality of your decisions was higher?
Yeah.
Like, isn't the end output going to be the same?
No, but sorry, I want to make sure that I'm not advocating that anybody should dedicate their life to work. This is not what I'm saying here. It's something that I personally like.
Mhm.
I tend to be tactical about what tasks I do and when. So I'm a morning person. I wake up
Mm.
very full of energy. So if I'm going to do any deep work, I do it early in the morning. If I'm going to be
Mhm.
making any decisions, I try to make them in the morning, any complicated decisions. As I get to the end of the day, I tend to do the more menial tasks, the more automatic tasks, the things that I have to do that don't require a lot of thinking. Or sometimes I do the thinking, but I just write it down and for the next day
Mhm.
to analyze. That's like on an ongoing basis, on a day to day. I would say
Mhm.
there's always value. Well, there's always value. Early on, I didn't find it, but now I'm finding it more like changing the space changes my thinking. So
Mm.
if I was in a situation like right now, I have a job at a big company at Canva, which is amazing. It doesn't have this shape. If I was in a startup again, I think I would work, even though I like working from home. I have a nice setup. I have a nice chair, nice keyboard. I have my screens. Like I love this place. And this is where I want to spend most of my time. But I have found that traveling and being in other places does change my thinking and tends to
Mhm.
unlock things. I tend to have this explosion of ideas. So in the future, if at some point I was doing startups again, I would put in a little bit more travel and a little bit more change of scenery. I know some people like go to a cafe. That doesn't work for me. For me, like I need to completely change, like go to another country.
Oh.
It's a big one, which is probably why I haven't noticed that it had that effect. I'm also not good at traveling, so I haven't done a lot of it.
Mhm.
But now I have noticed the pattern that I go traveling and I come back with new ideas and new excitement. Yeah.
Mm. Nice. So the strategy that you described in the beginning of your thought about focus, well, about you knowing that you're a morning person and stacking the deep work early in the morning and less important and more manual work later in the day definitely makes sense. And that's indeed one way um, to maximize your overall output, I'd say. You mentioned that you now work as a remotely, right? And
Kind of. Pexels, so is a company that Canva acquired. Pexels was fully distributed. It's still fully distributed, but quite a few of the people working at Pexels are located in London.
Mhm.
Canva has an office in London, and I go there. I say I go there once a week, kind of.
Okay.
And I meet some of the team in there, but I try this mostly remote.
Mm-hmm.
People would call this hybrid, but there's quite a few people in my team that are fully remote. So
Mm-hmm.
I try to make sure that all of our ceremonies and ways of working are always stay within the fully remote so that nobody ever feels like a second class citizen, which happens anyway because they don't know what's happening at the office and people imagine,
Yeah.
hey, the office is a constant party. It's like, no, it's not. But when you're far away and you're not seeing what's happening, that's the naturally what you imagine.
Yeah. 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 So we've already transitioned to this. So yeah, indeed, like in your current role at Pexels, you are head of engineering. So you're managing. So, well, actually, let me ask you: are you managing managers essentially, or it's
Yes.
more of a flat structure? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess. You spend a lot of your time thinking about how to optimize the different processes within the engineering teams, and that has to do with all kinds of different things like CI/CD pipelines, development processes, PR review processes, how LLMs are used. Yeah, so maybe you can, well, with a couple of sentences, describe what you are doing mostly on the day to day and some of the biggest challenges you have.
Yeah. Some of what you're describing, although a lot of what you're describing, I am delegating to people that
Mm,
own that, and I'm just checking that we're moving in the right direction. So I would say the single most important thing there is that I have the big picture of engineering and product and a little bit of the rest of Pexels and double check, and also a little bit of Canva, um,
mhm,
and double check where we're going. There's a big part of my job that is interfacing between Pexels and Canva, because
mm,
we have different ways of working and different requirements and different goals and so on, and we need to sort of convert, like find where we need to change things, but also find where we don't need to change anything. We just need to convert how we communicate, and that actually surprising takes a lot of time and a lot of attention, like figuring out how we fit in this big organization and making sure that the value that we are creating is seen correctly, things like that.
Okay. So one of the things I actually wanted to ask you is if you have views, and maybe that's related to what you just said now, is whether you have views on product roadmaps and how goals should be measured, and how these goals should be distributed from the top to the software engineers at the
Yeah.
bottom.
Yeah, we are, I would say we're still in flux and we're making big changes on how we do that.
Hmm.
And my role at Pexels was helping engineering through a transitional period. So 2 years ago, when I joined, what happened was the co-founders of Pexels, that were the engineers that were the leaders, left.
Hmm.
At that point, Pexels operated very much on its own, following its own way of working.
Hmm.
And Canva had a different way of working. So they brought me in to take the leadership of the engineering team at Pexels and bring in the ways of working of Canva to Pexels. So it was a lot of that transition.
Hmm.
And that transition, all of those transitions are always complicated and
Yeah.
messy, and we are moving towards a way of working that has a lot more autonomy, where we have value stream aligned teams that own goals and move forward with those goals. But it wasn't always that way. Like, we needed to
Hmm.
first tick the boxes of we're doing the right thing for Canva, and sometimes those were not exactly the right things for these small teams, and then move
Hmm.
on to alter that to do the right thing for the small teams. But yeah, I don't have an answer to that. Although my way of thinking is value stream aligned teams that own a part of the business and they have the autonomy to execute for those
Hmm.
well-defined goals, and also they have the responsibility of executing
Hmm.
that, the accountability.
And maybe just briefly, what is a value stream aligned team? Like, what is this?
Yes. So this is something that comes from the world, I think of, let's say, product management and how you
Hmm.
organize teams, where you give teams a part of the business to have impact over, and not a part of the system to have impact over. So
Hmm.
normally when we imagine teams, we imagine part of the systems, like this team owns, I don't know, the authentication system, and these teams owns the CI/CD, and these teams own the platform, things like that. The problem with that is that the goals of the company are sort of distributed through many of these, and there might
Hmm.
be parts of the goals of the company that are not owned by anybody.
Hmm.
So you might say this team owns like logging in and authentication and all of that, and they may just build a system that works in keeping things secure and say, hey, we're done. But what the business wants is to gain more users. So if instead you go and tell a team you own getting more users, they might do things that go beyond the system that they're interacting with, because they might realize, hey, the users are landing from this marketing campaign that then they're confused they're confused by a sign up screen because the marketing campaign tells them something different. So instead of like, what we need to do is not make the sign up screen more secure. What we need to do is put an explainer video before the sign up screen. And then they would do that because they're only increasing that number, like how many signups. And then maybe there's a second step on the sign up after that, that is on another system, right? And they would go and optimize that step. Like they have the remit of going through the whole system for the purpose of affecting business impact.
Yeah. Nice. That's a nice way to set up teams and also to align their mindset and their goals into what really they should be doing.
Yes. It still has some problems. Like if all your teams are value stream aligned teams, nobody would take care of DevOps. So you cannot have only one way of setting up teams. And actually, one of the challenges that we have at Pexels, because at Pexels we are 14 engineers, and 14 engineers is like too big to be one single team. A team of 14 people is too big, but not big enough to be many teams, because you might want to have at least 3 teams to say, we have these 2 value streams for the business, and we have the everything else team, which we could call the platform team or the enablement team or something like that takes care of the other things. And 14 people is just not enough. So we're at that stage where whichever way we choose, it's a compromise, and something doesn't work quite well, and we just have to accept it.
Yeah. And when in that group of people, you've had to take care of, with your colleagues, how you're using LLMs in your process.
Yeah.
So how has that gone for you? Like, has that been a process of giving the responsibility of each individual to try to use LLMs the best way they choose, or has it been some sort of a company-wide initiative where people are more or less, well, I don't want to say forced, but let's say encouraged to use LLMs more?
Yeah. So I am extremely lucky to be working at Canva. Canva is such a forward-thinking company, and they have adopted AI and LLMs so quickly. Like we have so many, like we have any tool that we want, we pretty much can have. Like there's no issue there. Nobody said anything about you're spending too many tokens or anything like that. So we have an amazing environment to learn and grow in the direction of using these tools. But generally, telling people go use the tool if you want doesn't quite do it. We did a few things. Canva has expectations that people are going to be using AI that have been shared Canva wide. I don't know how much of that is public or not, so I don't want to go into a lot of details there. But within my team, we started AI exchange, where every week we get together and we share what have we done with AI, with LLMs and so on. And at the beginning, it was extremely impactful in getting people to start using LLMs. Some people in my team run those events. We got some external speakers to come and talk to us about how they're using LLMs, externals to Pexels, but within Canva at that point. And then the managers worked one-on-one with each of the engineers. Both of my engineer managers are strong believers in using LLMs to code, and also they're good at it. And then they worked with engineers to get them on board with the idea. And yeah, some engineers like, oh, the new thing, I want to like use it immediately, like they're early adopters. And some engineers are like, I don't understand the value, I don't want to. It happens everywhere. It's fine. What we did is share all of the wins, and it was amazing to see. This happens like a year ago. How we had a lot of friction when we started, but then one person would have an aha moment, and generally was on a pairing session where one person was really good at LLMs and the other person was new to it, and the person that was good with LLMs was showing how to use it, and the other person had the epiphany. And we had people go from one week to the next, from I don't understand what this tool is good for, to I will never write code again with an LLM. Like that was the swings, and it was amazing. And every time, like we sort of grab that and show it to everybody else so that they could see that trajectory and help other people go through that trajectory.
Nice. So it was like a really like collaborative movement within Pexels. That's good.
Yes.
That's good.
And we're still doing it. And I think for anybody that's trying to do these, like we didn't have these within the team, and we went to somebody that went through these ahead of us and got a lot of advice. And I think the single most impactful advice that I got was to be naive, to not assume that it's not going to work. Just throw the problem at the LLM and see what happens. Like the single most impactful source of learning how to use LLMs is that. Just throw the problem and see what happens and keep on trying, because at one point it's going to surprise you by doing way more than you expected. But the only way is to give it a chance.
And have you had the challenge that some people might be using LLMs a little bit too much and maybe not thinking through the code that they are submitting in a PR enough? And the result is some sort of a blown code that can be written in a much more simpler way, but the LLM has made it a lot more verbose and added a lot of lines that then require the review of some engineer. And then,
Not that I'm aware within my team. No. So Canva has, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 engineers, something like that. I know this has happened outside a little bit, and very early on, the Canva CTO went like, you own the code. Like if you submit the code, you're going to be held responsible for the code. And if it's crappy code, we're going to tell you that you're writing crappy code, even if it came out of the LLM. That's no excuse. So there's a strong philosophy of ownership within Canva and also within Pexels that I think is preventing people from engaging in that. I would say that we still might need to find the sweet spot, because for prototyping, that's fine. It's code that you might throw away. So let's go with it. I think we might still be a little bit too careful at the prototype stage, and then how careful we are at the production stage. At Pexels, I believe we're generally fine.
Okay. And do you have any, I think the answer, I already know that the answer is probably not, is no, but do you have any more direct connection with the foundational LLMs, maybe for images or for video, or maybe with some ML models in your work at Pexels?
No, and at Pexels, we are very much on the side of, hey, we're capturing like the world as it is part of our mission and photography and getting all of that. So we are not doing any Gen AI when it comes to images like that. Canva is like there's a lot going on outside Pexels, but it's not our role within the company. We are doing a lot of understanding of the images and videos through ML to be able to evaluate them, to be able to understand what is present, to be able to search through them, to be able to match them. So we have challenges, and we want to know, like the challenge have a topics, and we want to know when people submit, whether they're in topic or off topic, and all of that. So we are in the quality of the Pexels website in that by using AI, where there was a lot of manual things. Pexels does a lot of manual work. Like we review everything uploaded manually, but we've been adding AI to increase the quality and speed and to create a better product. So when people upload a photo, sometimes they add a couple of tags. We add a lot more tags, and we make the photo a lot more findable, which is good for the user, because then the photo, it's found. We do things like that a lot through ML. We use a lot of GPT, but also we constantly experiment with the other ones, and we do evals and compare one against the other, both in how good they are, but also price, because we are a free site. So we need to be mindful of unit cost that connects to the single upload, because that can add up so quickly.
Okay. Something else I want to touch on is now we talked about different people like software engineers using AI and LLMs to help them with their code. But of course, there are also a lot of product managers and product owners who use AI to help them. And I wanted to ask you if you've seen occasions where people rely on LLMs a little bit too much, and maybe instead of thinking on their own and doing a little bit of their own research, they quickly jump to whatever the first thing is that the LLM suggests.
No. Wow. Okay. I
Okay.
thank you for that question, because it really it's really shining a light of how good the people that I'm working with are. Because no, and we use LLMs a lot, not only in engineering. Like, our product managers are using Cloud to create prototypes to give to the engineers, and even recently, one of our PMs ran a workshop with all of Pexels, everybody working on content and marketing and community and so on, to go and create your own prototypes. And we got this explosion of prototypes of ideas. So we're using it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, we really do not delegate decision making to LLMs. That is not something that's happening. We use LLMs a lot to, for example, write the queries that we run on our data to generate the charts and our dashboards. So we have people that have never coded a line in their life making dashboards with very complex SQL, thanks to
Mm-hmm.
LLMs. But we make the decisions based on data and based on interviews with our users, not the output of an LLM. So yeah, that's not the problem we have.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. That's good to know, because I feel like nowadays a lot of people are maybe people who work in, how should I say, companies who are moving faster, because
Mm-hmm.
that's one of their goals, trying to build a lot of products with, and LLMs help with that.
Yep.
But yeah, that's also a bit of a long-term concern I have, that is that people would both technical people and not technical people would start using LLMs more and more. They would start thinking critically less and less,
Yep.
and then the results would be a lot of I don't think the results would be good. There would be a lot of fluff on the internet. There would be some products that don't make sense. There would be some startup failures. Of course, there would be a lot of successful startups as well,
Yep.
but it would be a bit of a weird situation.
Oh, we're going to have so much startup failures.
Yeah.
But I'm noticing a pattern talking to entrepreneurs that I think is going to cause a lot of failures. But regarding what you're saying of decision making and LLMs, something that I recommend people is that they don't ask questions to LLMs. They make the LLM ask them questions and make the decisions based on the answers. So if you invert that conversation, what happens is that instead of delegating the thinking to the LLM, you're delegating the motivation to the LLM, and the LLM is forcing you. It's making you think and making you arrive at the conclusion. Still you thinking the conclusion. Obviously, still can bias you by the questions it asks, but just keep asking for questions so that it sends you in all of the different ways of thinking. It's like brainstorming on steroids.
Yeah, and to be fair, like I've recently used Perplexity for some deep research on like technical topics with some. I was researching some topic, and then there were academic papers on it, and I was asking some very specific questions about this, and Perplexity was able to give me really good answers really quickly with references that I could myself double check.
Yep.
And that was really a kind of a aha moment for myself, to use an LLM in a very productive way, and in a way in which I feel confident in the information that the LLM is giving me.
Yeah. Also, something else is use more than one LLM. Like anytime that I have a complicated question, I open Claude and ChatGPT side by side, and I throw the same question. Now I'm doing it with Claude GPT and Gemini. Throw the same questions, see all of the outputs, and sometimes like, hey, ChatGPT, Claude says that. What do you think? And like almost pit them against each other. Again, you still need to check. You still need to evaluate, because they all hallucinate. But because generally they would agree if there's a piece of information that makes them agree, and they would hallucinate differently. So it kind of lets you capture some of that. Yeah.
Okay, and I think we've also we've mentioned a little bit remote work, and I think you've actually wrote a book on managing remote teams,
I did,
right?
yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That book came out of the pandemic, actually. So during the pandemic, I was working at a company where I was already running a fully distributed team, and my team was almost not affected by the pandemic. We barely noticed for a while in the work life, but the rest of the teams at that company did notice. And they sometimes would ask me some questions about how I was doing what I was doing with my team. And that made me realize a lot of the habits that I had that I have developed because I've been doing remote work on and off since 2004. So long time. Like my first remote job, literally we used IRC to talk to each other. There were no calls, no video, nothing. It was just IRC. I have never even heard how the voices of my colleagues sounded at that point. That was the level of remote we were. So I've been doing it for a while. During the pandemic, I noticed a lot of those habits that I had. And I think then I tried to help other people online, if I could, that were having similar questions when they had to very abruptly move to remote work. And out of all of those questions, I started writing blog posts, and then it turned into a book that was very hard to finish, but it is finished. And it covers many of these habits.
Was it for you personally, was it a worthwhile project? Is it something that you think that people, if they feel like writing a book, that they should do it?
Oh, hard. It was so hard, and I chose some paths that were even harder in how to write the book. I would say if you like writing, if you like producing written material, then yes, maybe write a book. If you want to have written a book, don't bother. It's way too much work. I'm somewhat in the middle of those two things. And one of the side effects of that was that I never marketed the book. So it was self-published, and I actually registered my own publishing house at that point because I chose the hard way, and I ran out of steam. Like by the time, like when I hit publish, that was the end for me. Like I did not have any energy to market it in any way. So I would say no, the book was not a success, a commercial success, but still for me it's like I wrote a book, like it's out there, it exists. Like I am proud that I have managed to do it, even if it didn't go anywhere beyond that.
No, yeah, that's very useful also kind of to share this knowledge then and your learnings about it, because indeed it's difficult to write a book. And that was, I would say, a few years before the LLMs became prominent, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I would say once you finish writing the text of the book, for anybody that's considering it, you're done with about 40% of the work. Maybe 35, 40. Like you still have most of the work ahead of you when you finish writing the content of the book. And I know I heard other people say exactly the same thing that I just said, and I completely ignore them. And I know they're going to ignore me. And I know somebody else will go and try to write a book because they think that I cannot possibly rewrite in my statement. It's fine. Otherwise, we wouldn't have books, and books are great.
Yeah.
I love books.
That's the human nature, right? To ignore good and reasonable advice.
What was the phrase? We choose to do these things not because they're easy, but because we thought they were going to be easy.
Exactly. So while we are speaking about remote work, you also mentioned that some of the people in your team now are working remotely, others not so remotely. But one pattern I've seen in some larger organization, let's say at least scale ups and above, is that it's a big challenge to keep the fully remote workers from being second class citizens, because most of the time the leadership conversations are happening in person in the office. And then if you are a senior engineer or maybe a manager and you are somewhat excluded from this conversation, it's not the greatest feeling, and it's not the greatest pattern for a company. So how do you try to alleviate that?
The proximity bias. Yes. So at Pexels in particular, the organization is led by two people, and the other person is in Toronto. So we are online, we are remote to each other. So I think that helps a little bit in this particular case. This is not useful for somebody else. One of the things that I do is I act remotely even if I am at the office. So I try to, for example, if you're going to have a meeting and half the people are at the office and half the people are not at the office, I try as much as I can not to be in the group that is in a room in the office. And I often go to a booth by myself. So I am remote to everybody. So capturing my attention takes the same effort by everybody. And there's no first or second class citizens. They're all remote to me. I do that a lot. I make sure that we don't have conversations that make decisions without bringing those conversations to some of the remote ceremonies that we might have, whether it's an ongoing one or one that, hey, we should discuss these and let's discuss it with more people, and it's going to be in a remote way. Having said that, it happens. It happens that there's a little bit of information that exists only in the office, and it doesn't go remote. It doesn't exist in the remote environment. In particularly, I would say there's a level of casual conversation that we have at the office that lately I've been having trouble getting people to have in a remote fashion. And this casual conversation is often not seen as very valuable. It's just like we're having a chit chat about whatever. But the reality is that out of this chit chat, we generate product ideas, we change our direction, we do a lot of things. And this means that there is people do get penalized by being remote and not participating in that. And to do that, I do generate online chit chat sessions where I open a huddle in Slack and I just hang out there. And anybody that wants to come and chit chat with me can and talk about anything and whatever. Like we can talk about the weather or we can talk about work or anything. But a lot of the time, these opportunities are not taken advantage by people working remote. So even when I create them, it doesn't mean that it's an immediate success.
Yeah. It's difficult, and I've also found it sometimes myself. I've been in situations like this where there is just an hour, like I don't want to say a happy hour, but like an online happy hour, where people just like a coffee chat.
Yep.
They talk to each other. Oftentimes I'm like, well, okay, I'm working on this task. Should I go to this chit chat or should I just continue working? Okay, I just continue working.
Yep.
Yeah. But something else that I found challenging in all remote or mostly remote companies is keeping the conversations public rather than hidden in one-on-one DMs or in private groups. Have you seen this challenge as well?
Yes, and we have a it's not a policy, it's a guideline of, hey, if the conversation is not sensitive, bring it to a public channel. It's like somebody reported recently from our Slack, like the Canva Slack, that something like 70% of the conversations were in private channels. So still an uphill battle. But I do push. So sometimes somebody comes and asks me a question privately, and my response is, hold on, what you're asking me is not sensitive. And other people might want to know the answer that I give or might have a better answer than I give. So can you go and ask it again in this channel? I do that frequently, although I did that for a while, and then lately I haven't been doing it. So I think we got much better at having these conversations public. There is a compromise there though, which is not everybody is comfortable contributing in public forums, and their comfort goes down with the size of the organization. Some people are very confident and will post anything anywhere, and some people are more shy and they will not. So when you push for everything to be public, you are losing that dimension of diversity because people that are shy are going to contribute less. And by the way, this is not about introversion, extroversion. That is separate. But yeah, there's a compromise there. So it's not an easy, let's just make everything public and that's it. You lose something when you do that.
Yeah. It's a difficult balance. And especially what I found it another way, it's another thing that makes it difficult is that it's difficult to enforce it. Like even if you tell people that they should try to keep their communication public so that the others would benefit, a lot of people might go for private DMs.
Yes.
And it's difficult.
It happens. A pattern that I've seen is like there's a private, private DM between two people, and then the other third, and then the other fourth, and then it turns into a private channel. And then like 3 months later, it's like, why do we have these private channel? Or and I've seen this happens. Like, why do we have these 3 private channels that are all about the same thing, and they have 80% the same people on all of them, but the other 20% is like different people that do not know that the other channels exist, and it creates so much chaos when because some people posting one, some people posting other, and the projects are advancing in different directions. People have different views. Yeah, it gets chaotic. Yeah, you something okay, something for everybody to know. This is not something that has a solution. Imagine it's almost like a sculpture of clay that is too wet and it's like slowly falling. It's not that you can put it in the kiln and now it's solid. It will never be solid. You constantly have to like put it back in. So this is not a thing where you find the solution to the problem. You need to find the habit that keeps solving the problem, because the problem will never stop appearing.
Yeah, exactly. And you should build systems which steer you in the right direction. And
Yeah.
maybe one of those systems is culture.
Yeah.
The challenge, of course, is that culture normally stems from the top. So if your CEO, leaders, and managers of managers are supporting this culture, then most likely it would go to the others.
Yep.
But if there are some important people higher up which are not on board with this culture, then it would be messy. It would be difficult to implement.
It's even worse than that. If there's because this is not a solution, this is a constant effort. They don't need to not be on board. They just need to be oblivious for this to be a problem. So, for example, the office politics. This is like office politics. Everybody hates office politics. Everybody believes that because they hate office politics, they are not contributing to office politics. But that's not how it works. Office politics happen automatically. The only way by which you keep it low, you never get rid of it, is by actively quashing it with things that feel counterintuitive. So you don't need to have a leader that encourage office politics. You just need to have a leader that doesn't actively fight it for the company to develop a lot of toxic office politics.
Yeah, that's a very good point indeed. Something else, a bit of a change of topic, is I wanted to get your opinion on the state of the job market right now, because it seems like there is everybody is complaining about it. So both hiring managers receiving hundreds of AI-generated CVs, and then on the other hand, you have job seekers complaining that it's difficult to find the right jobs. There are not a lot of jobs. There are like all kinds of interview rounds that you have to go through, all kinds of hoops that you have to jump through.
Mm-hmm.
What is your take on this whole thing?
Okay, we can talk about this at so many levels. You mentioned about generating applications with AI. We created this amazing cheating machine that AI is. That we have. Like the reality is that we have no way of countering it. Like we don't know how to. And learning, like developing how to, it's moving slowly than the progression of the cheating machine. And I think we just need to accept it. And we need to switch gears. And yeah, it's going to be very hard. And it applies to so many things. I cannot imagine like in schools and universities. Like when I was a kid, yeah, I was cheating by copying from Encarta, right? But the teacher that had Encarta would find out so quickly. Like it was so easy for them to tell, look, we know you cheated. But now it's getting harder. But that's just the AI part. I think there's a real pain that is happening right now in the market, and with lots of people not getting jobs because right now we need money to survive. It's brutal. So I don't know exactly why it's happening. I think a lot of companies are blaming AI. I think a lot of there are some studies that show that it's contributing, but it's not the only thing. Like there's something else happening. There's the overhiring that happened during the pandemic that we are um, uh, correcting. I was like, hold on, we've been correcting it for 3 years. How long are we going to keep correcting the overhiring? Like, how much did we overhire? I don't know. There's some studies there, and I think there's also the change in level of hiring, where
Mhm.
right now it's so hard to get a job as a junior engineer, and I think in part the LLMs have something to do with that, because when the value of the line of code goes down and the value of being a stakeholder manager, a product manager, somebody that thinks at that level goes up, the value of the junior engineer that normally starts by just writing the code but not doing the stakeholder management, not doing all of those other activities, it dropped a lot.
Mm.
So we do have a problem there. And the solution is not hiring junior engineers, because the company is going to have a problem. Like, aside from the fact that all of those people are suffering, let's ignore that for a moment, which is terrible. The what are we going to do in 10, 20 years? Look what happened with COBOL, right? With
Mm.
mainframes, that they stopped getting new people, and then now we're having massive problems with people coming out of retirement to maintain these systems. We're going to essentially do the same for the whole engineering industry. That makes no sense. But we haven't figured out what the new job of an engineer is
Mm.
and what the junior version of that job is. And maybe we should take, like, I don't know, let's look at sales. I don't know much about sales, but there's a version of the senior salesperson and there's a version of the junior salesperson. Does the junior salesperson, like, maybe it will look more like that because it's about the relationships, and we need a version of building those relationships that will be part of the junior engineer that now
Mhm.
we'll have to start teaching in schools. And this is what I was referring earlier when I said the fabric of the culture of engineering is changing, because, like me, I think there's many that came here because we like computers more than people at
Mhm.
one point in our lives, because computers are logic and they felt good. But now engineering, well, it was already a lot about people, and I think it's becoming about people a lot more with the advent
Mm.
of LLMs. We haven't figured it out, and it's going to be painful. It's going to continue to be painful.
Yeah, exactly. But the nice thing is that, of course, every time there is a big change and turmoil in certain industry, or maybe in the whole market as a whole, in the whole economy as a whole, there are always opportunities for forward thinkers to take advantage of these opportunities and to build the new systems for tomorrow. But in these conversations, we've also been talking about failures, of course, a few times, and it's difficult. Of course, a lot of people will try, most will fail, and only a few will succeed. So it will be, as you say, it will be challenging.
So yeah, at the same time, this is something that is in my mind, which is we've seen a few times through our industry where there was something new, and because it was new, the the establishment of the enterprise was kind of ignoring it,
Hmm.
and the younger engineers were adopting it. Like, oh, it's so much nicer to code with Python than to code with Java, right?
Mm.
Even though Python is, I think it's older than Java, but let's ignore that for a moment. Please forgive me there. It's sort of like, when it comes to the industry, Java took the enterprise of the industry, and Python was seen as like lesser. But over time, this force of new engineers that started to build amazing things with Python meant that if you look at any of the stats now, Python is about Java, right? In how much it's
Yeah.
used. And it's the language of ML because it was this new wave. And we just talked about how much effort it's taking um, to get engineers to use LLMs. What I think a lot of, like, we're missing is that there's going to be a wave, and I don't know if it's the current way of junior engineers. Maybe it's like the one that is going to be here like in a couple of years,
Hmm.
that will have no problem with LLMs, because that's the way the world looks for them. They're going to be the LLM natives, and they're going to run circles around the ones like me that are trying to still adapt, and we're coming from behind and we're busy with things, right? And I think ignoring them will be uh, bad for companies, like
Hmm.
because they're going to be creating a lot of value very quickly. And I think some companies realize this, and they're charging ahead, because what's going to happen is when they don't have a job, they're going to create a startup. And when they create a startup, they're going to come and eat somebody else's lunch, because the engineers are running circles around the engineers that are still dragging their feet of whether they use LLMs or not. The same way
Yeah.
that Java displays COBOL and Python displays C or Java and so on.
Yeah, yeah, and in a lot of larger organizations, there are incentives to not change things and to keep them as they are because they're good enough and people don't work a lot and they're comfortable with their environment and everything. And these large organizations have a lot of inertia and they move slow and it's difficult to change them. But with a technology like LLMs and AI, these sort of organizations are on a downward trend. So they are
Yep.
collapsing, but very slowly, like this massive ship, which is
Yes.
sinking, but it's very slow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think many organizations are in this boat.
Yeah. I think you and I and many people that I talk to live inside the AI bubble. And I don't mean bubble in the financial sense is about to collapse. I mean in the echo chamber sense, where we don't see that. Yeah. I don't think I think a lot of engineers are not using LLMs yet. A lot of companies are not using AI yet. Like this future is not evenly distributed.
Yeah.
And I think those companies are going to be in trouble. But I think unlike the previous waves, the giants of today know this.
Mm.
If you look at what happened with previous companies like IBM, right? Don't think what happened to IBM is happening to Google. It almost happened, right? With like OpenAI started running around and now Google like woke up.
Yeah.
And they know that they are never safe. Microsoft as well. Microsoft came back from like it felt like it was going in the direction of becoming irrelevant. And it woke up. And I think all of these companies are now have accepted that they constantly have to keep waking up. So I think those are mostly going to be safe. But in the middle, like below that, we have a bunch of companies that I don't know if that were.
Yeah, exactly. So we've talked about some kind of predictions about the future and stuff, but and about many other stuff. I'm not going to ask you for any more specific predictions, but was there a topic that we somehow didn't touch on and that you wanted to discuss or chat about? Or if not, maybe if you have any advice for up and coming junior engineers and people who want to break into the engineering world.
Yeah, about topics, I'm not sure. Predicting the future is extremely hard right now.
Yeah.
There are moments where I feel like it's going to be amazing, and there's moments where I feel like uncontrolled superintelligence is going to eradicate humankind. And I find myself oscillating between the two and trying not to have existential crises about things that I come up. Which I highly recommend for everybody.
Good advice.
For junior engineers, I've been thinking a lot about that. I do monitor a few forums and spaces to see how they're doing and the general complaints and understand, like keep a pulse, keep my finger on the pulse of that part of the industry. I have some advice, but I don't feel very confident about the advice.
Mm-hmm.
So I will share it, but please take it with a pinch of salt. One is do charge ahead with new things. Don't ignore LLMs. Don't ignore all of that, because that it's a superpower that makes you stand out. Looking at the new things and adapting to the new things is a superpower of the young. It's harder for older people, so you should like double down on that superpower. When it comes to getting a job, I still believe that contributing to open source is the way to unlock this sort of, hey, everybody requires experience and I don't have any, and I cannot get the entry level job. Even the entry level job says it requires experience. What is going on? This makes no sense. Yes, that is correct. It makes no sense. But the task of somebody that is just entering the workforce is not to make the world make sense, because that's an impossible task. Is to navigate it the best they can. And contributing to open source. Lately, I think it has been misunderstood quite a bit. So I feel like going into a little bit more detail. If I am hiring, let's say, a Rails engineer because our application is written in Rails, and I see somebody that produce a Ruby library like a gem and release it, and I go and I check and it has some downloads. It doesn't have to be super popular. It has to do something useful and be a
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's like, okay, that's cool. That, like, I want to talk to that person. Like, that goes up the stack. If that person contribute to Rails, that goes up the stack. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that it shows agency. When we run into a problem at work, that might mean that we are hitting a bug in Rails. That person can go and fix that bug. It has shown that they have the agency to go and fork the Rails repo, find the code that has a problem, fix it, submit it, get it accepted. There's a lot of hoops there of working in a large code base, of communicating with other people and convincing them that your fix is the right one and getting it accepted and so on, that look very similar to what it's like working at a company. So it immediately puts you up the list of candidates that I want to talk to. If you want and talk, like, if you want and contributed to Ruby itself, then I know that you would have a good understanding of the language and you will not be confused by the semantics of the language being different than what you think. Now you're showing me that you have a deep understanding of the tools that we're working. That is what you get by contributing to open source, which I still don't see, despite how much this has been said and repeated. I still don't see a lot of. Whatever area you want to work on, you want to code in React, go and contribute to React. And how do you get started? Don't implement a new feature because you're nobody and you have to convince people that the feature is valuable. And because you're not exposed to the industry, you don't really have the data to know that the industry that the feature is valuable. Go fix a bug. Like, find a bug in the issue tracker and go fix it. Now, this is not easy. Generally, those bugs tend to be hard. So pick something easy. What is something easier than that to get started with? Fix documentation. Like, all of these projects have documentation that has problems. Read the documentation, find the part where it's broken. Even if you fix like a typo, it's your first commit. Like, you get started there. After that, help validate other people's fixes. So you're going to see that all of these projects have a lot of PRs that are, hey, I fixed this bug. Like, I encountered this bug and I fixed it. Here's my PR. And the maintainer looks at that and is like, oh, okay, I need to clone the, like check out that branch, run the test it manually and so on. Don't do that work. Like, check out that PR, see if it works. You might find your code is already out of date because the main or master branch moved forward. So here are the changes that you need to keep it up to date. Like, you just help that PR move forward and then say, hey, it didn't have test, I added the test. Or, hey, it has test and I run them and they pass. You're just confirming it. You're helping a stranger with their PR, but you're also helping the maintainer because the maintainer now looks at that and it's like, there's one extra point of validation. I might, like, they know that it will take less effort to get that merge into the product and they care about the quality of the product. They want to merge that PR. So those are ways of creating value that looks like experience. And to be honest, if I have two CVs in front of me, one has 2 years of work at a non-name tiny company that I don't know what they do, and the other one says, I've been contributing to React this way. The contributing to React, that's the first person that I want to talk to. It doesn't land you the job, but it puts you at the top of my list.
Yeah, which is like that's the first and perhaps one of the most important things in the job market nowadays, like getting invited to the interview rounds.
Yep.
And then of course afterwards there are a whole bunch of other things that you have to be good at to eventually land the job. And but yeah, that this is like as you say, it's kind of a low cost way to make yourself visible and to show what you can do. It's actually valuable to the maintainers of this library, making it easy for them to accept your contribution or your bug fix is of course a very nice way to think about it. It's not, don't just write the code and throw it out there, but make it easy to the reviewer to eventually merge it. Yeah, pretty good advice.
Also socialize. Like, they're going to have a Discord or they're going to have a place where the core developers hang out and the other developers hang out. Go there and talk to the people like, hey, I'm about to try to solve this bug. Can anybody give me any guidance? Great. I solved it. Here's the thing. Can anybody review it? Like, do that socialization, because those people are working somewhere. Those people might be hiring. Like the remote job that I mentioned earlier that I got in 2004 was because I was contributing to KDE, the desktop environment for Linux, KDE, Qt, and so on. I build some KDE applications. I contribute to KDE directly. I don't know if I was a core contributor or contributor. I can't remember exactly the terminology. And there were some people making set-top box for back then cable and all of that using the same libraries and the same technologies. And we talked to each other in the channels where we were going back and forth. And eventually one of them says, hey, we need to hire somebody. Do you want the job? It's like, yeah, sure.
Why not? Really good advice. I like it. Okay, so before we wrap up, is there any place where our viewers can follow you? Maybe if your book is still being sold, you can plug it in, or just anything else that you want to share about you.
If you go to my website, pablofernandez.tech, you'll find all of my stuff. At the very top, you find I am on all of the social media places. You can follow me in your favorite one. And also there's a link there to my book, which is being sold in Amazon.
Okay, amazing. I really enjoyed our conversation, Pablo. Thank you very much for being on the podcast. And until next time. Thanks for listening to the AI and ML conversations with myself, Javor Botev. If you want to support the show, please subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. In addition, please follow the podcast on Spotify and Apple and share it with the people you know. Thank you.